In a beautiful garden filled with flowers of every color and fragrance, lived many insects. In this setting of vibrant colors and green leaves, life was busy and full of little adventures. Among the inhabitants were an ant named Fifi, known for her tireless dedication to work, and a butterfly named Belle, famous for her graceful wings and her gentle flight from flower to flower. Fifi worked all day long. She carried bits of leaves and food to the anthill, always attentive to the needs of the colony. Her fellow ants also worked hard, but somehow Fifi always seemed to be the most dedicated. However, in her moments of rest, while resting under the shade of a leaf, Fifi would often look up at the sky and watch Belle, the butterfly, flying freely. Belle's wings sparkled in the sun, and her flight seemed light and effortless, as if she had no cares in the world. How nice it must be to be a butterfly, Fifi thought, sighing. While I work all day, she just flies around the garden, unhurried, unencumbered. But Fifi didn't know the whole story. One day, tired of imagining, Fifi decided to talk to Belle. When the butterfly landed on a nearby flower, Fifi climbed up on a rock to talk to her. "Belle," Fifi began, "it must be so nice to be you. Flying around the garden, always so free and carefree. Sometimes I wish I were a butterfly instead of an ant. Don't you think your life is so much better than mine?" Belle, with a warm smile, looked at Fifi and fluttered her wings. "Fifi, I understand how you feel, but I wasn't always like this. Before I became a butterfly, I was a simple caterpillar. I spent my time crawling on the ground, slow and vulnerable. I had to wait for the right moment to transform. It was a long process, and most of the time, I had to trust that one day I would become something more." Fifi stared at her in surprise. "I had forgotten about that. You were a caterpillar, weren't you? I remember seeing you crawling around the garden, but I didn't imagine it would be so difficult. It must have been very boring and tiring to wait all that time." Belle smiled tenderly. "It was difficult, yes, but patience has taught me a lot. Sometimes, the things we most desire take a long time to happen, and we need to trust that, in due time, everything will come true. You work hard, Fifi, and you may not realize it now, but your effort is building something important. Just as I waited patiently to transform, you will also see the fruits of your labor in the future." Fifi thought about the butterfly's words for a moment. "Do you mean that, just as you waited to transform, I also need to be patient with my work?" asked the ant, scratching her head. "Exactly," Belle replied, landing gently on a nearby flower. "We all have different paths, but we all need patience to see what the future holds. You may not be able to fly around the garden like me, but the work you do in the anthill is essential for everyone. And in time, you will see that your efforts have been rewarded." Fifi was quiet for a moment, thinking. She remembered how sometimes she felt that work was tiring and never finished. But maybe she was looking at things the wrong way. "You know, Belle, I think you're right. I was so busy wanting to be like you that I didn't realize that what I do is important too. Maybe I just need a little more patience to see the results." Belle smiled again. "That's right, Fifi. And if you need a reminder, remember how patiently I waited to become a butterfly. Everything has its time." After this conversation, Fifi went back to her work, but this time with a new attitude. Instead of feeling like she was missing out on something by not being like Belle, she began to appreciate what she did. Every leaf she carried, every tunnel she dug, all contributed to the well-being of her colony. And, over time, Fifi began to see the fruits of her efforts. The anthill was thriving, and she knew that her work was an essential part of this achievement. Meanwhile, Belle continued to fly around the garden, but now Fifi no longer envied her. She understood that everyone had an important role, and that patience was the key to seeing the value of her own path. Moral of the story: patience is a virtue that helps us understand the value of time and effort. Everyone has their own path, and we don't need to compare ourselves to others. What really matters is to do our best and trust that, in due time, the results will appear. Did you like this story? Like the video to help us bring you more stories like this. And if you haven't subscribed to the channel yet, subscribe now and activate the bell so you don't miss the next adventures. See you soon.